Hi guys, my name is John and I am an ex-John. And, but for the grace of God, I'm up here today and not sitting there. Pretty hard to tell you 35 years of active addiction in about 25, 30 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. And my core belief is that I was a practicing addict for 35 years, not only in sexual addiction, but in alcoholism, drug abuse, gambling, workaholism, lying, cheating, you name it, I was on the dark side. And I lived there for a very, very, very long time. So I'll tell you very briefly some war stories. And I only do that just to let you know that I identify with what a John is all about. I heard it mentioned this morning before I start the story Pretty Women that Hollywood put together with Julia Roberts. And I assure you, the life of a prostitute is nothing like that. And I think you heard that this morning. In the past 6 years working with Streetlight, on the other side of prostitution, helping the girls, I've learned a lot about them, and it's a sad place to live. What those girls sold themselves for was, as you saw in the movie, money for pimps, money for drugs. And what I need to tell you is my drug of choice was sex. And I spent a lot of years in it. A lot of years in it, and I spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars on prostitutes, gambling, drugs, and alcohol. And it wasn't until I was 47 years old that I made a change. So that was a long time out there. So I'll just share a few of the stories to start off with. My first adventure, and it wasn't with prostitutes always, and not until a little later in my 20s, but in my teens, at 14, I ran away and pulled the Bonnie and Clyde deal with a young girl who was 13. And we went on the road. It was a sexual addiction for me at that time. I can realize that today. I didn't know it then because I was in such denial until I was 47 years old. Denial being that the things that I did all those years, the people that I hurt, the money I stole from my company, the money I stole from my children's college funds, the money I stole from my family that I used for all those addictions was a denial that there was something wrong. And today I see there was. 10 years ago I saw there was. But starting off with that first little episode at 14, running away with this girl, breaking into homes, sleeping in back of trucks and cars, and the only thing we didn't do, we didn't have guns, we didn't hurt anybody, but we hurt ourselves and we hurt our families. And truly, that was the start of it. That was truly the start of it. And it was to grow from there. It was truly to grow. What I would find in my later teens is that I could not honestly get into a relationship with a girl, as you know, young guys know a girlfriend. I just didn't know what that was about. Every relationship I got into was about a sexual liaison. I thought I loved them, and this thing of love would come up in me, but it was only lust. It was about multiple relationships. I chose at 21 years old to marry this gal, which I did, and we stayed married for 25 years. But that 25-year relationship in my marriage was about anonymous affairs, one-night stands, escort services, right till the part where I got to street prostitution. And what street prostitution was for me became the quick fix. Just as in the drug addiction, you know, I'm all set up for the day, I know what I need, but if I run out, I need the quick hit. And street prostitutes became the quick fix. And it was a sad place to go. It was a sad place. Because today, I see that purchasing sex from those girls, I was just like enslaving them. I had this deal go on for me. It was about power issues. I had the money, I had the resources, and I was buying people. And I was using them for my pleasure. And then I didn't see the sadness in that. I really didn't see the sadness in that until it was brought, you know, into the light at 47 years old. So from the time I was married at 20, well, time I was, 14 years old, right up to my 25th anniversary, getting close to being 47 years old, my life was just a denial that there was anything wrong with what I was doing. I spent my life lying to my wife, lying to my employees, my partners. Everything was a lie. I didn't know who I really was. You would think I was one person, you would think I was another. But if you collectively all got together as friends and business people and stood me in one room, I wouldn't know who to be. I had just lost my own identity because I was so entrapped in addiction. And I'm not standing here saying anybody has any addictions going on for them, sexually or alcohol or drugs or otherwise. But it starts somewhere, and the behavior snowballs, and it snowballs, and it snowballs. I can remember, picking up a prostitute, and maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Then it'd be once every 2 months, or every one. Until when I got into my late 46, coming up to 47, it would be 2 and 3 times a week. Now you can see where those tens of thousands of dollars would end up going. I lost a lot because of it. I'd left my wife 3 times. Twice to run off and live with other women. Only that, to the grace of God, we were able to reconcile that marriage. But I knew there was something wrong with me. The behavior of all these relationships, all this going out into these activities, I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know what it was. When I was 47, I'd left my family once again. My daughters were in their very, very early 20s, and they were very angry, extremely angry. My wife was devastated, and I didn't know there was anything wrong because I was in this blackout, this blur of addiction. Excuse me. One morning I woke up. I'm living in a basement apartment. My wife and my kids are still in their home. They don't want to see me anymore. They don't want anything to do with me anymore. And I woke up this morning and I said, what's it going to be today? Shall I get up and go to work and be a responsible human being? Should I go to the liquor store one more time? Should I find my friend the drug dealer? My friend the pimps? Because see, my friendships and relationships with other human beings had narrowed it down to those small people, that small group. The guy at the liquor store, the drug dealer, the pimp, and me. And that's how lonely it became. It became a very, very dark, lonely place. I was intelligent. I had some wonderful positions. I was director of a daycare center. I was a deacon in a church, my local community. A member of the Big Brothers for many, many years. Many community jobs. All those things going on. An intelligent person, but this morning I couldn't, the only choice I could make was one of 4. A couple of times I had the other choice that life was getting so bad that maybe I'll just get rid of myself. And a couple of times I would drive along the highway seeing how fast I would have to go to hit that bridge to take my life. And the reason I didn't do that was the fear that maybe I wouldn't kill myself and I'd end up in a hospital bed for many years to come. Life was truly insane. So this morning I phoned my wife, and it's sort of like, well, what do you want now? I said, I want help. Can you help me? She says, there's nothing more I can do for you. You know what you need to do. I said, I don't know. I have no idea. We made an appointment with a psychiatrist, which I knew. I'd gone to him many, many years before, and every time I went to a psychiatrist or to a doctor to talk about things that were these relationship problems, the drug abuse, alcoholism, the answers were all the same. Why don't you join AA? Why don't you go to Narcotics Anonymous? Why don't you get some family counseling? No, I'm too smart for that stuff. This time I cried out. I really reached out. And this woman, when I had emotionally abused for that many years and emotionally just disconnected her from who I was, said, let's go to the psychiatrist. This doctor I knew, he took me in very, very quickly that afternoon. It was 2 weeks before Christmas. And I finally said, I want some help. And I realized today nothing changes until I open my mouth and say, somebody help me. Somebody help me. That man offered me a couple of days in the psychiatric hospital. They would evaluate me. Maybe there's something they could do to help me. A psychiatric hospital? Me? Well, I went. And I'll tell you, I didn't get out in a couple of days. It was 11 weeks. Because when I got there, the denial, again, was so powerful that I wouldn't share what was really going on. In the hospital, I found Alcoholics Anonymous, because in the psychiatric units, they have AA programs. The first time I went was because they had coffee and chocolate donuts. But while I sat there with that, I realized those people up there are saying things that I really identify with. What is addiction? Well, I realized what it was that day. Addiction is any chemical, any substance, or any activity that will kill my pain, augment pleasure, and mood alter me. And I was using them all. I was using them all. So I started to attend the AA meetings there. I started to find some relief. That wasn't to be the end of it, believe me. Because while I was in that facility, I had my last crash. I had permission to go out and purchase cigarettes across the street in the local smoke shop. Now, what happens in a psychiatric hospital for an addict is that you're lonely and you feel real low. All this big, powerful self-esteem I used to have has now dwindled down to no self-esteem. But there was a young woman there, and she was very attractive, and I made this usual addict move on her. And the deal was I would get some alcohol, and we'd have a little party, and then, we'd probably sneak off to one of the washrooms in the hospital rooms and have sex. And that for a sex addict, isn't that wonderful? And an alcoholic's going to get booze into a psych unit. I did all that. I snuck 3 bottles back in the hospital. I shared it with this young woman, shared it with a couple other patients who were probably on some medications for schizophrenia or multiple personalities. I'm just a wonderful guy. Well, I got caught. Nothing happened. We got caught. And that night, I'll tell you, the fear that I had, I ran from the hospital. I actually escaped from the psych ward with just a spring jacket on. This is probably March now, pair of shoes, something like this, and, just dressed like this. And the only place I could think of to go was to go home to where my wife and kids were. And I took a cab and I did that. And I terrorized my family that night. I had never done this before. My behaviors had never gone this far. This was the insanity of what addiction could do to a human being. I terrorized them. And long and short of it, my youngest daughter, she phoned the police, and 3 cruisers came, and off I went to jail. And I spent the night in jail to be returned to the hospital the next morning, because that's where I really needed to be. I knew that. I got there the next morning, and they sat me down in the emergency waiting for a psychiatric doctor to come down and readmit me. The police officers went outside to have a smoke, and I beelined for another door, and I took off again. This is the insanity of where all this behavior will take you, for me. And I've heard many stories over the years being in recovery rooms that other men have suffered similar behaviors. I went home again, right back to the same place. Only this time I was sick, once again tired, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I slept there for a while, and I did go back to the hospital that afternoon, and I did complete that 11 weeks. And I'll tell you the miracle of all of that. I stopped drinking. The only medication I was taking is what the hospital was giving me. And they found me a program, a recovery treatment center in California. And it was put on by Dr. Patrick Carnes. And it was a sexual dependency unit. You see, I wasn't sure, or they weren't sure, if I had multiple personality disorders. All kinds of things could go wrong. But once I got there, Dr. Carnes, yeah, you're just, I'm not going to minimize this, you are a sex and love addict with other active addictions. You see, anybody who gets into the behavior of an addiction, be it alcoholism or drug abuse or sex addiction, you always got a couple other ones running with it, because one is never enough. Because the feelings I would get being with a prostitute, after that act was finished, I would have some real shame come in on me. I would go into this area of despair. Actually, I would realize it'd be a form of depression. A real form of depression. So how do I counteract that? I'd stop and have a couple of drinks on the way home and make up some lies to tell wife where I was. Stop at the gas station, put gasoline on me and tell her I had a breakdown. And my life was lies. I didn't know what the truth was anymore. The things I had to do to cover up the places I've been and the people I was with became a world of lies. A world of lies. So I get to this day. I'm leaving to leave for California. And I got to believe in one sense it was the happiest day of my life, and in another sense it was sad. Because when I got to the airport, nobody came to say goodbye to me. Because nobody wanted any part of who I was anymore. I'd become that crazy. I left my business behind. I told my partner I'd be away. He thought I was going away for a 28-day program. I told him I'd probably be a year. And it turned out I was a year. So I left Nobody said goodbye. I arrived in San Francisco. Sorry, I went to Los Angeles. I arrived in Los Angeles. There was nobody there to meet me. I got on a little minibus and went to the treatment center, and I sat outside for about a half an hour smoking cigarettes, wondering, where am I? I'm 3,500 miles from home. Does anybody care about me anymore? Because I wasn't even sure if I cared about myself. I had done so many things. The behaviors were so dark. The cruising, the endless hours of cruising the streets looking for who I wanted, the endless hours of crawling around full-blown with addictions, drugs, alcohol. Who could ever possibly love me again? Who could ever want to be with me? So finally I got the courage up and I walked in that treatment center because I knew once that door closed behind me I wasn't coming out for a while. I discovered the most wonderful place in the world. The first guy that came up to me, the intake guy, gave me a hug. He said, "Welcome, we've been waiting for you." And every guy in there just sitting in rooms of men just about these same numbers. Just hugs and affirmations and, you know, you're another addict. You see, now I was in the world of recovering addicts. And they'd all been where I was that first day when you walk in and say, I want to change my life. I don't want to do those things anymore. And that word change, it's sort of a focus word I heard this morning too. Today is the opportunity to step through the door and make a change from the behaviors that we've been living in. Well, I didn't stay 1 month, I stayed 2 months. Now, a couple of things happened while I was there. A, I started to get better. I started to share who I was. I started to identify feelings rather than just, how are you today? Oh, fine. Fine is not a feeling. I could now and then search inside me and say, this is how I feel, and I'm scared. You know, I've never faced this situation before without having some chemical or substance to use to cover up that pain. I had to learn how to do that. One of the first people I met there was a young gal named Leslie. She was a young black woman from Mississippi, a prostitute. And she too was, she identified herself as a sex addict. She came to treatment because she was sick and tired of being out there selling herself hour after hour, day after day, year after year. And Leslie and I had this connection. Now, here's a guy who was abused emotionally, sometimes physically, spiritually, young women, by purchasing sex from them. I am now befriended by a prostitute who's changing, who wants to change. What a wonderful relationship that became. Because after 30 days when she left to go home, she said to me, and I've got it on tape at home, they gave me a little tape of it, that I was the first man in her life that she could ever actually say I was a friend to her. She had this somewhat of a love inside her because she knew what I was doing I didn't want to do. And we just made this, I don't know, I made my amends to the world of prostitution through this young woman. It was a spiritual thing. It's hard to explain what it was about, but anyways, there was a connection. The other guy I met there was Eugene. Eugene had already been in the treatment facility for 2 months before I got there. Eugene was dying of AIDS. He couldn't come to the meetings after a few months. So what we'd do is we'd go to his room and we'd sit around his bed in our chairs and we'd have our little meetings, our discussions, our talking about what life was like for us and what we needed to do to change. And the guys had all left the room one day and I said to Eugene, one-on-one, I said, Eugene, why are you here? Why are you in a recovery treatment center for sexual addiction when you know that, you know, the clock is ticking down for you? And he gave me hope that day because what he said to me was these simple little words. I choose to end my life in recovery away from that world as opposed to being out there and dying in it. And he gave me that little piece of strength that I needed because I was hanging on with threads. And he gave it to me, that it was better in recovery. And a young lady said it to me today, you know, the worst day in recovery is 50 times better than the best day in addiction. So the ongoing treatment, and I did. I actually got back to Toronto. Once again, nobody said goodbye from Arizona back to Toronto. Nobody met me at the airport. My car was sitting in the garage where my wife and kids left, and I went over to pick my car up. My daughter, I remember her opening the door and saw it's Dad, and kind of closed again. And there was a lot of sadness in that, because I know the behavior that I had lived in, those kids were justified to do that. So I was getting close. I met up with some Jesuit priests at a place called Manresa. It's a Jesuit spiritual retreat center for 12-step recovery. You've all heard of AA and the 12-step program. Every program I'm in is very, very same as that, very much the same. This Jesuit priest hooked me up with his family, a recovery family. They opened their door and they said, come and live with us. You stay here as long as you need to. That's the gift of other recovering addicts. Open their home and let you come in. Not really knowing who I am, other than Father Gordy had said, this is the man who needs a place. So time went on. I missed my kids bad. I was starting to realize I'd missed my relationship with my wife. My relationship with my wife had ended. It had ended in California. She came to Del Amo for Family Week twice. She didn't come to see me. She came for herself. She came to understand what addiction's about and things that she needed to do for her. And on the second week there, just a few days before she was leaving to go home, we sat, and she said that our relationship needs to end now. She says, I need to do closure on our relationship of 25 years. And I tell you, there's still a little bit of denial in this guy, a little bit of denial. Said, oh, she'll change her mind when I get home and I get better. So she left, making that plan that she needed to move on in her life and start over, I guess. And I'm still sitting there with this thought that I'll fix that when I get home. Well, I'll tell you, it's 10 years later and it's never been fixed. And it was about a year before my kids came around. One Saturday afternoon, my oldest daughter rollerbladed up to the house where I was living and knocked on the door. Just, you know, it'd been a long time since I had seen them. I wanted to hug her so much I couldn't, you know. I just wanted to hold my kids once again. That process started to heal. They started to see Dad changing. I was going to AA meetings, NACA, SLAA. I was doing all the meetings on a daily basis. And I decided, you know what, I wasn't doing it for them, I was doing it for me. And I did it. And I did it. And I started to change. Life was different. I took all those things that I thought were my character, all those, well, they call them character defects. But I thought, God, if I remove all those things that I do from me, who am I going to be? I won't be anybody anymore. But that's okay, because I finally got to this place in my life I was asking my higher power to take them away from me. And every time something left me, every time one of those nasty habits, every time those thoughts would come in my mind, something new came in. I came back and I basically had no friends. I remember one night saying, God, just give me one friend. Just give me one friend finally. Those drug dealers and pimps and guys in the bars and the girls I all knew, they weren't friends. They were just vehicles to use my addictions. Vehicles, components of my behavior. Friends, I'll tell you, I've got more friends in this world now than I think a man could ever dream of. True friends, true recovery friends. Friends that when I sit down, I say, I'm not going to say, how'd you like the baseball game last night? I talked to a few outside before you got here. I say, how do you feel about today? Our friendships are so different, our relationship. We're on different pages, you know. It's not about feelings and activities and men who can talk to each other at a level it's really new to me, too. So I'm going to get quickly into what today's like. I just want to show you a couple of things. I want to show you this. Nobody pinched it, did they? Is it over there? Yeah. Oh, there it is. Ah. Okay. I had a lot of time to think about this. This is a poster I brought from me. We use this in many other schools. Prostitutes aren't born. So it's a little bit of an artist's concept of what a young girl would look like. When I was a kid, I didn't want to be a John. I never had a dream I was going to be a John, or as the girls would call us, Tricks, or whatever. You see, they used me to get money to buy their drugs and give it back to their pimp. I used them because they were I was addicted to them. When a prostitute told me that I was the best lay that she had had, or I was a real sweetheart and I want to see you some more, I believed that. I really believed that. Today I don't believe it. Today that's not true. That was said to me so that I would come back again and give them the money again. I understand that. But when I see that picture, I wish there was a little guy we could put up there, you know, looks like any one of us. We weren't born to be Johns. That's not part of the criteria of our life. Our life is to, for me, it's to have an honest, open, loving relationship with another human being. When I got to the program of SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, I walked in there in a bit of fear. My fear was, oh God, they're probably going to make me give up sex, the same as Alcoholics Anonymous made me give up alcohol, and when I go to Narcotics Anonymous, I can't use drugs anymore. I'm going to end up in this program, and they're going to tell me I can't have sex anymore. And I was afraid to go. So I went there. They said I should go for 6 meetings and see if the program's for me. Well, in the first meeting I got there, I knew it was for me. The second meeting I got there, I started to get comfortable. And I think the third meeting, I called one of the guys aside at coffee break, and I said, do I have to give up sex? They said, no, that's not what this program's about. This is how to put sex into a healthy part of your life. Sex is one of those gifts that God gives to man and woman. It's just the most wonderful, pleasurable gift that God's given us. Use it properly in a loving, intimate relationship. Not paying somebody $50 or $100 for it. It's about doing it in a loving relationship. So that's why they call it Sex and Love Addicts. So the love and romance part, I had to learn how to live in that. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I'm in a relationship today. I struggle in relationships because, you know what? I'm still an addict, but I'm in recovery. I'm in recovery. I've got 9 years in AA and 9 years in Narcotics Anonymous and 5 years in SLAA. And when I'm in a relationship today, you know what? I focus on that relationship. Now, where the struggle comes in my relationship is my partners, they have to know who I am. This morning when the officer said, do your wives know where you are today? Well, my girlfriend knows where I am. She knows I'm in Edmonton speaking at a John School. And she'll know where I'll be in Victoria in a couple of days from now. And every time I do a John School, of course they know where I am. My kids know where I am. Those same kids that didn't want to be with me, as soon as I arrived in Edmonton, I had to phone them and tell them I was okay and safe. That's what our relationship's like today. All those things that I went through with them. My oldest daughter wanted to go to college. She's a dental hygienist today. And she came to me as she was getting accepted for college. She said, Dad, I'm going to Sudbury to college. I'm going to be a dental hygienist. And you know what she was coming for? The support of that college money that I had supposedly put away some 15 years before. And I'll tell you, I had to sit there and tell her that your college fund is long gone somewhere else. And I could see the sadness, and she hung her head. And before I could open my mouth, and I was going to say, but don't worry about it, I'll borrow it, and we'll get you through college. She popped her head up with these big eyes, and she said, Dad, I'll get a student loan, and I'll go through college. And you know what I need you to do for me, Dad? I said, what's that? She says, come up and visit me every 2 or 3 weekends. She says, be my support system. I said, I can do that. And I did do that. And I was up there every 2 or 3 weekends. And when she wanted to ride back for Christmas time, I'll tell you, I was up in Sudbury bringing her back. So she realized that, you know, there was sadness in the things that I did. Yet she could forgive me to the place where we could have this relationship. Our relationship, my relationship with my kids is wonderful. One more thing that became very powerful. When I left Toronto on Friday morning, my ex-wife drove me to the airport. She's my friend today. We're very close in our friendships. We have better conversations, which I've learned. She already knew how to do them. Women already know how to communicate. My wife knew how to have conversations. I didn't know anything. Today we have them. Today I can listen. And I don't listen with this thing flapping. I listen with these two things. And we have a wonderful understanding, a wonderful friendship. I would not have that had I not gone to 12-step recovery. If I had not found Alcoholics Anonymous. If I had not phoned her that 10 years ago and said, please give me help one time. I want it this time. None of that would have happened. So the losses. Money, business, friendships, positions. Put them over here. The most important thing I lost was the relationship with my wife. I grieve that still. And here it is 10 years later. I'm not past it, but I'm still grieving it. For what I got out of it was a friendship with a wonderful human being. And the fact is, tomorrow morning I know, well, the rest of today I know I will not drink, I will not use any drugs, and I will not have sex with inappropriate people in inappropriate places at inappropriate times. I make that decision. I made that this morning as soon as I woke up. Just before I spoke, I sat over there and I made that decision one more time. And I just hope I give the seed to one of you. Any one of you, just take one little piece of seed. That what we do out in the street there, what we do in the going into the strolls, to purchase sex from another human being, to devalue who they are, to dishonor that they're women, and they have troubles with their alcohol and drug abuse. They have troubles with whatever life has dealt them out. We don't need to be part of that, and I choose today not to be. I've got one more little thing I want to show you. This took me a long time to figure this one out. I had to figure out what goes on for me when I wanted to go out and purchase sex from a prostitute. And I can relate it to any addiction for myself today, but I'll just relate. The first part is what I would call preoccupation. A lot of what we do is fantasy. For me, I'll just give you an example. There may be a movie on television or a movie I went to see, and there had a lot of sex and naked bodies and female naked bodies. I'll qualify that. And so the fantasy would come in. Wow, that's great. Would I ever like to go to bed with Jennifer Lopez or you know? And then it progressed for me where you rent pornography movies, buy the magazines from the store, the strip bars. I was a frequent flyer in strip bars. So that would be the preoccupation. I'd be thinking about all those things. I would be fantasizing. Fantasy is a big part of addiction, fantasizing about it. And then in some period of time, whether it's 1 hour or 1 week, I moved down into the ritualization. And that for me was getting ready for the hunt. I know what I want. I'm getting ready for it. I know where I'm going to go. I've got my plan. Here's my route. I may even have a shirt that I want to wear, a certain type of music I may put on the stereo in the car when I'm going. But the plan's laid. It's the best laid plans. The CIA could not come up with plans like I could. So the ritualization, I'm there. The hunt's on. And the hunt takes me to this part. This hunt could last an hour. I could drive around 15 blocks of the city. I could go into 3 different areas where I know there are known strolls, or 5 areas, because I got something in my mind that I know I'm looking for something tonight. 6-inch high heels, white nylons, mini skirts, somebody with red hair, somebody with blonde hair. It's almost like a shopping list. It's powerful stuff. It's powerful, it's baffling, cunning. The sex act, I find what I want. I've now picked up the prostitute. We've made the deal. We're in the car, it's up the alley, around the corner, in the park, wherever it may be. The deal happens. And how long does it how long does it last? What's the best length of time you could give to having sex with a prostitute? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? I don't know, you guys all like to think maybe a half an hour, whatever it is. Because I'm going to tell you, she doesn't want you there any longer than it takes, because as soon as she's got your money, and this is not to discount her, as soon as she's got her money, she gets back to the stroll and gets another hit. So the quicker you are, the better it is for her. You've now just had the best sex in your life that's lasted 5 minutes. How good was it really? Well, I don't think it was that great. It never was for me. What would make it good for me is I would get into this high-risk behavior. So now I'd gone into the worst part of town, the darkest, the sleaziest. I'm going to take a chance I'm going to get beat up by a pimp. I'm going to take a chance I may get caught by one of the undercover vice officers. I may go to a place where it's a chance of getting caught, because the sex now needs components added to it. It needs high risk added to it. I got to get into the high risk thing because it pumps up my adrenaline. This is how nuts I got. So now I'm here. It's over with. There's a period of time before I hit despair. And the despair comes when I think, oh, shit, I did it again. I told myself I wasn't going to do it anymore. I've now just spent another $50 that I could have used for that new fence we needed, or, you know, something I wanted for my boat or something. Or it's the middle of the afternoon and I've just cheated my employees out of maybe some work and some money. And I'll tell you what I did do to my business. When I left Toronto 10 years ago, there was 21 employees. Today there's 4 of us. That's what I did. That's what my addiction did to that company. 4 good employees who hung in with me. 4 people that said, I see something in this man. We'll stick around. So that despair would come in, and that would be low self-esteem. That would be pain once again, anguish. I may go and drink because of it. I may drink so much I get into a blackout because of it. But I didn't know how to get rid of that pain. The only way I could get out of it was go right back up to here, to the preoccupation, and go right through it again. And life became the addictive cycle, and I was on it. Until that morning, I made that phone call. I was able to finally say to somebody, another human being, help me. I need some help. I never knew how to do that. When I was in the treatment center, I used to wear this sign around me. It said, if I don't ask you for help, confront me. Because I would never ask anybody for help. Oh, I'll go do that. You know, I would be Mr. Codependency. Hey, your shoelace is undone. Hang on, I'll get it for you. If I don't ask for help, confront me. So I had to learn how to heal. The cry for help. The journey. Okay, so the journey. Now it's 10 years. I'm back. Life is okay. Life is changing. I got a lot of things to get by. Got some new friends. I'm in the programs. Things start to happen. I get connected with a couple of people in SLA, in particular, one old priest, Father Gordy. I mentioned his name earlier. Wonderful, tiny little guy. Couldn't weigh more than 90 pounds. And he would take all his big, overweight, strapping guys and sit us down, and he would give us love and life, and he pumped it into us daily. And we'd attend meetings, and life started to change. People came back. Friends came back. The children came back. The friendships with my wife came back. New relationships came back. No more lying. No more hiding. No more telling. If I'm going over the store, I went to the store. And what I had to do for a period of time to make that happen, I had a lawyer in particular who was a sponsor. So if I was going downtown Toronto on business, I'd phone him. I said, Tommy, I'm going downtown. I'm leaving now. He'd say, John, that's great. As soon as you get downtown, give me a call and let me know you got there. And I had to do this for a period of time, just keep checking in with people, just so I'd stay on the right street. It was a real narrow road. It's a twisty one, but it's narrow, and I'll tell you, I needed help to stay on it. I got it. So life is going on. The business is still rolling. I'm involved in all the 12-step recovery. People are asking me to come and speak. I'm involved with some of the service work of setting up AA conferences, workshops. SLAA, I got involved with a bunch of people there, started going to treatment centers in Canada to talk to the boys. And then one day somebody phoned me. I didn't know who he was, and he said, we got this program we're going to start in Toronto. It's called John School. I went, yeah? He said, would you like to get involved in it? And I said, well, how? Well, just come and speak to the Johns. Come and tell them a little bit about what went on for you. John School, as you heard this morning, started in San Francisco. And I guess they connected me through the treatment center in California. I think that's how it happened. So anyways, I went to my first John School, and I stood up behind a podium like here, and I wish I could have stood on my hands. I was shaking so bad. But so John School evolved. I got involved with Streetlight, which is the Toronto program. It's identical to what's going on here today. Wonderful program. And I facilitate and I coordinate the John School today. In my home, every Sunday night, men come. There's 9 guys coming right now. And we sit around. You know what we talk about? Feelings. Some of these guys are ex-cons, ex-drug addicts, ex-hockey players. Haven't had any police officers yet, but they would certainly be welcome. And you don't have to be a recovering addict in anything to be there. You have to be a man who wants to learn how to feel and share it. So we learn how to confront people. We learn how to healthily affirm people. If you got an issue you want to face at work, we talk it out. You get some feedback. Maybe somebody's had some experience. That goes on in my home every Sunday night now for 7 years. For 7 years. A couple meetings a week for SLAA. 1 or 2 meetings a week for AA. And then if I got any free time left over, I'll do something for myself. That's all for me. That's all for me. I've only ever seen one hockey game this year, and the Leafs got beat when I watched it. But that's what life is like today. It's just about being connected with people, giving back and taking for myself, and just staying in the change, staying in the change. That door got opened. I had a choice to step through it or stay here. I stepped through it scared. I stepped through that door with tears coming down my face. I didn't want to leave that life. It's all I ever knew. All I ever knew. And one gift I got out of it. My father passed away 5 years ago. When I was an alcoholic practicing, I could never communicate with my dad. He lived in Northern Ontario. I lived in Toronto. I got sober. He got sick. And I was able to spend the last three years of his life together as a father and a son. And we got to know each other again. I got to forgive him for the things he had done to me. He forgave me for the things I'd done to him. And the day he died, I was 7 years old. That gift of asking for help. All those things I would have missed. My kids, my wife, my dad, and many other people. And all that's been given back to me. And that's just a direct result of what John's School can give you guys. If prostitution is a problem, if this was not the first time you were out there, if it's been an ongoing problem for many years, those are just some of the things that can happen to you, the bad things that can happen to you. And by making that change today and maybe cheer to help you, those good things can change and happen. And they're wonderful. I think that's 45 minutes. Thank you, and I'm going to stop there.